be. All right, everyone. Hey, I'm live. Great. The lag takes a little getting used to, but let me close that and we're good to go. So let me switch over to here. And a quick introduction. Prime did a great job going through things, but I've been using Vim for about 10 years. I ran a local meetup in the DC area. And so that gave me the chance to talk at a bunch of local meetup events, meet a lot of really great people. And I wrote 2 plugins a couple years back. One of them lets you view stack traces in your splits. And the other one is kind of like a window manager if you have a ton of splits, like I used to always have, where you have a sliding window over them. So before I forget, I wanted to give out a quick thanks to everyone that's made Vim Conf possible. Adam, Prime, everyone who's helped arrange things backstage, and all the other speakers have been really great to work with, and I'm honored to be among them. And I want to thank my company too. They sponsored my local Vim meetup for years. They jumped at the opportunity to sponsor this. And most importantly, they let me pose with my favorite keyboard on their otherwise very professional website. So I'm very happy that they let me get away with that. So opening up the talk, I want to open with a story from one of my, let me switch over to the stage comments down here so I can get distracted. Great. So I was at one of these local Vim meetups and I was talking to this guy and I said, hey, what programming language do you use for Vim? And he said, well, I don't know yet. It kind of took me aback. You know, most people learn Vim kind of late in their career. And he said, well, I'm a professional musician and I decided I want to learn programming. So first I decided to look into keyboards and I was like, what's the best keyboard and how do I, learn to type quickly and learn to touch type? Then I started looking at operating systems and learned a little bit of Bash and C and the command line. And now I'm trying to learn Vim. And maybe after that, I'll pick a language, maybe Python or something, but I'm still deciding on that. And so this really stuck with me, not only because it was unconventional, but because it got me thinking about the fact how that people have been learning all these other trades like music or martial arts or crafts for centuries or millennia, way longer than people have been learning to program or use Vim. And so maybe there are lessons in how they learn things that we can apply to our learning of Vim. Switch over to the terminal real quick and pull up my notes. Great. All right, so I have a couple of things that I want to show you in Vim. So when I started, I want to walk you through from when I first started learning Vim to where I'm at today, how I would do a simple task. So when I very first picked up Vim, and if I wanted to change this true to false, I was still using insert mode and arrow keys. So I'd arrow over there, backspace out, change it to false, and pat myself on the back. And at the time, that's all I knew. So that was fine. That's how I did things. Maybe when I was feeling super cheeky, I would try to arrow before that E and like delete 3 letters and only type the rest. But half the time I'd end up typing the whole word anyway, and it would still screw me up. So that didn't really help that much. But the cool thing about Vim is it gives you so many other ways to do things. So very early on, you learn about HJKL and maybe CE to change the end of the word. So now you can just do L to the beginning of the word and CE false. And look, you've saved some keystrokes. You got to stay on the home row and everything's good. And really, when you learn this, it is a big improvement over using the arrow keys. But you often forget, looking back, how hard it was for you to learn this, right? This only works in normal mode. So now you have to remember to escape out of insert mode to move around and get in that habit of escaping out when you want to move. And this does take some time to develop, but once you do, it becomes second nature. You just automatically escape without thinking of it, and you stop trying to track what mode you're in as you're editing. So once you learn that and practice it enough, it becomes this second nature thing where you don't have to think about it. It just works. And that's kind of the advantage of repeated practice. Maybe later on, let me change that back to true. You learn about W and B, and now you can move by word. And that's way quicker. And this is still the way I edit things all the time, just because it's so much quicker than using HJKL, and it's fairly easy. So that's great. You can now get there in fewer keystrokes. And this is where you start to learn that Vim has all these different motions for you, and you get to pick whichever one works best for you. And this is just the start, right? Next, a lot of people learn about F and T. So F and T let you get to the next occurrence of that character right before it. And I want to walk you through when I first learned this, what it was like trying to use F and T. So I know I want to get to that T over there. And I can use F or T to get over there. I'm moving forward. I want to get on the T. So I want the lowercase F1. So I'm going to type an F and a T. And oh, I didn't jump to the right place. There was another T on the line. So I need to repeat that. That's semicolon. And then I get there. And when you're first learning, this is actually slower than using the arrow keys. And it's only with practice that you can find some efficiency in this. And jump over real quick. Oh, wrong window. So this introduces this idea of your productivity over time as you're using Vim. And I picked up this concept from a book I just read called Mastery. I was giving a talk and had Mastery in the title, so I thought I need to read a book called Mastery. But one really cool idea they had is this idea of your productivity over time as you're learning something. So when you first start, you're very low, you start getting very comfortable, you go up, and then you learn about a new feature like this WB or F and T. And your productivity actually drops because you're learning something new. But over time, as you develop the muscle memory and practice that and learn to use that very efficiently, it goes back up again. So as you're learning Vim, you're going to have these up and down bumps. And the key is to keep striving for learning things as muscle memory and having these things become second nature, and just take them on one problem at a time. You don't need to learn F and T day one. You can do, just HJKL, WB, whatever you want until you're ready and you're comfortable with that and ready to learn about the next step. So let me jump back over here. So F and T actually worked out to be slower than the arrow keys. And the good news is as you practice, a lot of these steps will go away. So you won't have to think about how you're going to use F and T. You're just going to right away say, I want to jump to that T, and you're going to do these two things as a single motion. And when you're not in the right place, you're going to learn to anticipate that. And when you type FT, your finger is going to be hovering over that semicolon key, just waiting to hit it. So with practice, this does speed up. But F and T introduced this concept of misses. And I like to think of it like a cache miss or something, where you thought you were going to jump to that T, but you don't. You end up jumping somewhere else because you didn't see the other T in the line. And you can find this in many areas in Vim. If you're auto-completing and it's not the first result when you expect it to be, or using a fuzzy file finder, you'll repeatedly encounter this idea of a miss, where you want it to do one thing, but it's a little bit stochastic and kind of random in a way, and it didn't do exactly what you expected. So you need to learn to deal with these misses. You can learn to anticipate them and have that finger hovering over the semicolon. But you'll also find that you build an intuitive sense for how likely you are to miss. So for instance, when I'm using F and T, I use them a lot with punctuation or capital letters, which are rarer in my programming. However, if I'm doing lowercase methods or lowercase letters I'm trying to jump to, I'm more likely to just use WB, because somewhere in my brain it's stuck that those F and T might fail more often for that. And of course, the last thing you can do is find other solutions that are less likely to miss. So let's get back to our example over here. I can also search for the true. So if I start searching and type TR and hit enter, I jump right there. And now I can change that to false. Right? And there's two ways to search. You can either search, and with ink search, you can type the T and see if you're there. And if you're not there yet, you type the next letter and now you're there and you're good. Or you can search by just typing the first few letters and hoping you end up where you want. I usually use that second method because I don't want to have to look at my screen and wait for it to tell me, am I there yet? Am I there yet? I just want to risk the chance that I'll do a miss, and 99% of the time I don't, and I end up being faster that way. And then lastly, just to mention it, There's also a plugin called Sneak. So instead of using F&T to go single characters, Sneak lets you jump 2 characters at a time. So I can just str, similar to my search, but I don't need to slash and enter. And I jump right there. So Sneak's pretty cool too. And then lastly, some of you may know that you don't need to CE false because, of course, there's Vim plugins to help you with that. So in my case, if I type Control A, I can swap between true and false over here. So now combining all these things, if I'm at the beginning of this line, I know I can sneak over there and hit Control A to toggle it. So the reason I wanted to go through that painful journey of all those ways of doing these commands is to talk about the idea that you want to learn a little bit at a time and then focus on mastering it. And no, I'm not cut off. I'm just blocking my screen. So you don't want to day one have to learn about F&T and Sneak and Switch, because before that, you need to learn about modal editing and getting to the right mode at the right time. And only after you've internalized that and mastered that will you be comfortable with some of these more advanced techniques. So don't worry about learning everything at once. Just try to pick up one little thing at a time. And if something isn't working for you, you don't need to use it. If you don't like F&T, just don't use it. There's a million other ways to do it. And it's all about what's intuitively easy and comfortable for you. And then as soon as you're starting to feel comfortable, that's when you want to look for improvements. So once you're comfortable with W and B, that's when you start seeking out F&T or search or some of these other methods. All right. So next, I wanted to talk a little bit about improvements. The first thing I tell a lot of people when they're picking up Vim is to make a vimrc, and first thing you put in there is a shortcut to edit your vimrc. So in my case, it's "VE." Open another window. And the cool thing about this is not only that you can reference all of your plugins and settings and all of that stuff if you forget them, but if you think of a new thing you want to try, you can open this, add it, save it, and source it, and you're going. And if you want to change it later, open it, remove it. But making that loop of changing things and trying them out as short and tight as possible is really key in learning to use Vim better. Let's close that. One thing that you'll learn is even the smallest changes make a huge difference. So I'm in the JJ to escape crowd. So instead of reaching up for the escape key, some people remap caps lock. I learned that you can remap JJ in insert mode to escape. And it sounded weird at first, but once you use it, you realize, oh, this is really, really fast and actually works fairly well. And so this has a chance of giving you a miss, just like that F&T. If I'm trying to type a word that has 2 J's in it, then it's going to think I'm trying to escape and escape out. But luckily, those words are pretty rare. So these are the words with 2 J's in it. And for instance, if I wanted to look at words that end in J, because if you're trying to type a J and then type escape, it'll mess you up. None of these are words I'm going to type. So I like this example because it shows you a strategy for finding a mapping that's not likely to miss. And you can then use that to improve your productivity. And as you learn this, it will be muscle memory. When you first start, you think about hitting the J key, but after a while, you're just double tapping your index finger when you go to escape. In my case, I'm using Dvorak, so I actually mapped HH to escape, which misses a little more, but I'm so used to that double tap, I can't give it up. Go back up here. In a really silly example that's a little more controversial, I remap semicolon in normal mode to colon. So normally to type a command like save, you do :W. And I'm like, I don't want to have to hit that shift key just to type a command. So instead of hitting shift and the semicolon key, I can just hit :W to save. And it seems kind of dumb, right? You're remapping semicolon, which normally is for that F&T thing. And it's such the smallest improvement. You don't have to move your pinky over and hit that shift. You're saving maybe like a fraction of a second, and sure, those seconds add up. But what this is really about is easing the cognitive mode and just making Vim more comfortable and usable for you. So even though this seems like such a silly thing and you've got to find out another way to repeat your F&T commands, this has actually one of the bigger impacts. And if I ever don't have it, I miss it really hard. And you can play around with many other ways to reduce keystrokes. So of course you'll get into mappings as you learn about your VimRC, but there's also abbreviations and snippets to play with while you're programming. And you can really make Vim yours and customize it however you want to. So for instance, if I look at my abbreviations, I just have a few in here to play with. This would be in my config, nvim, init.vim. So a sample abbreviation, instead of typing implementation, I can just type impl. And I forget what I was working on at the time that I had to keep typing this word and just got sick of it and typed impl instead. And as soon as you hit space or period or anything else, it completes the word for you. It saves you a bunch of time. And it doesn't do it if it's part of another word. So I can still type simple and it's not going to expand that. They're a bit dangerous to deal with, but if you try them out and you like them, great. I have a bunch for Python that I added more recently just to save a few keystrokes. I'm not convinced that these are actually that beneficial yet, but I thought I'd play with them and try them out, see how they go. To show you an example of that, let me switch over to this other guy. So as I mentioned, you want to really practice to make these things turn into muscle memory. And one great way to practice is to repeatedly do the same programming problem in what's often called like a code kata. So I started doing this with Python to try out these new snippets I had written. Here's a small one where I'm running a prime number, writing a prime number generator. It takes about a minute to get through. You'll see instead of import, I typed im and space to go over. And then I'm trying to use snippets. There's a bit of visual artifacts from the screen recording software. But this was a chance for me to play with all of these and figure out maybe this snippet is good, maybe this isn't. You know, the 4in one, it really doesn't save that many keystrokes. I'm using autocomplete when a word I've already typed needs to be typed again. And repeatedly trying your code out this way is a great way to practice. And the other cool thing you'll see in a minute is I have a key binding in Python. So if I am in normal mode and hit enter on this file, it'll open up a terminal and run the file. And if anything goes wrong, it drops me into debugger that shows me all the variables, lets me do whatever I want over there. Another snippet for import main. And I just pre-recorded this because I'm too nervous to type this crazy thing live. And you can see after this, I run another snippet for that and I hit enter, it runs the file. There's an error because I actually didn't include the 2, the first prime number. So now I jump down there using sneak and I use that yield 2 and now I'm done. So that was probably take like 30. It's crazy when you record yourself using something like Cinema as I did or another tool, how embarrassingly slow and error prone your code looks when you're looking over your own shoulder. And that really helps give you kind of a coach in yourself and a critical eye on learning how to improve to program. So it gives you a chance to practice the same thing again and again, because again, if you are an athlete or you're a musician or anything else, you're playing the same scales, you're running through the same exercises, you're doing the same thing again and again and again, just to try to build up that muscle memory and really practice the techniques in a very concise way, rather than just when I'm coding, maybe I'll use a snippet once or twice. And next thing I wanted to talk about is, did I talk about improvements already? Let's see. Let me close this. I did. So next on the list is talking about magic real quick. If I type the full file name. So as you learn Vim, one cool thing you'll figure out is that a lot of the knowledge builds on top of what you already know. So for instance, if I have a print foo bar and I want to change the stuff in that print to something else, you learn about CI. But then if you get targets.vim, all it does is add a CIN that lets you do it if you're before the string. So now I can CIN and I can still change it. And it even works multi-line as well. you'll learn lots of other cool tips as well. So just like you can say I double quote to do inside double quotes, you can make your own custom text objects or find others that are out there. So VII is select inner indent for me. So everything in the same indentation level gets selected. And once you learn all these cool normal commands, you also learn how to repeat them. So first you learn about dot to repeat them, but then you might learn about macros. You might learn about norm, which is my favorite, short for normal. And that lets you just say, you know, if I want to, all these lines, I want to do something to them, I can say like norm, insert at the beginning, you know, a double quote. Now every line it's going to insert after the space is a double quote. After norm, you can also use norm with G. So you can say, just do that for lines that match a certain pattern. So I can say like, well, I don't need that. I can just say G, any line that matches this CI thing, I want to norm I double quote. Maybe you learn about recording a macro and realize you can use your macros in these G patterns. And my personal favorite plugin is actually Quickfix Reflector, which does a very simple thing. All it does is it says your Quickfix list that you use when you search is now a buffer that you can edit. So let me show you what that means. So let's go over to some test code that I wrote. That's very simple, dumb stuff. And let's say that you have a bunch of JSON files here. They have some IDs in them and they have sensors in them. And these sensors, someone told you, oh, those actually shouldn't be uppercase. All the sensor IDs are supposed to be lowercase. Well, I can use ripgrep in this case to search the whole directory, find all of these. Thanks to Quickfix Reflector, I can delete these additional entries that I don't care about and resave the file. Because it's a Quickfix list, I can browse it, you know, by the single entries or by file. And then the cool thing that Quickfix Reflector lets you do, which a few other plugins have picked up and gotten on this, is I can edit the text on the right side here and save all these files simultaneously. So for instance, in this case, if I say like norm v2 in double quote, so I'm using that targets to select everything in the second pair of double quotes, and then I want to lowercase them. Now they're all lowercased in both files. I hit save, it saves both files. So now I can go over here and look at both files, and it's all lowercase throughout your whole project. So now you're not only editing a single file, you can edit your entire project as a single buffer using this. And it all comes from the simplest extension of Vim, just saying, oh yeah, that quick fix list, now it's a buffer. So that's one of my favorite examples there. And that covers most of what I wanted to talk about. I'm going to hop over to a few resources for people that are trying to learn this stuff. So when I first learned, Vimcasts were very helpful. Drew Neal has since written a book called Practical Vim. That's a very great guide to learning. And my one bit of advice with that is that you don't want to read the whole book cover to cover and try to memorize it all. Read it a little bit, practice with it until you get it down, and then read the next bit. While you're learning, you want to have a channel of tips and tricks and ideas in the background so that if a new idea sounds really cool, you can think, oh, you know what? I'm ready for this. I want to try this out. And it helps teach you what's possible in Vim in a way that's very passive for you. You just check your email or do something else. So Vim Tricks and the Vim subreddit is a great way to get this information. You just kind of learn about all these cool features passively. The Freenode Vim channel is great. And there's a Vim Conf Discord where people can help you if you get stuck. And if you ever want to write a plugin, you should read Learn VimScript the hard way, cover to cover, and practice it out. Because VimScript is a complicated language with lots of crazy stuff going on. So I learned a lot through that. And I'm so glad I didn't just try copying what other people had done and try to skip the hard part of learning. So that covers everything I had to talk about. I'm going to take a quick look at the comments, so feel free to ask questions in there. I know there's a bit of a delay. Yes, so someone mentioned the CIN command. That's called targets.vim. Targets. So that's the one you want for CIN. Yep, Vim script is a complicated language. Yes, so normally you can't CI double quote outside of the double quotes, but with that targets and CIN, that's what lets you do that. Remapping JJ to escape. My key mappings. That's the wrong one. Let me see if I can find the right one. There it is. If you want to remap JJ to escape, I know remap JJ escape. And again, in my case, I use HH as well. You see my plugins. By my plugins, do you mean the ones I wrote or just the plugins I use? This is a big laundry list of plugins that I have installed that I'm happy to go through. You can find these on my dot files. I still need to push a commit with a newer version. So if you look up Matt Boehm, you can find a lot of this there. Fuzzy File Finder, I still use Control P pretty heavily because that's what I'm used to, even though I've been told I should switch to FCF. And I'll just leave some of these on screen in case you want to see some of the plugins. Some highlights, you want a way to toggle comments on and off, in my case, Nerd Commenter. Let's see what else is really good in here. I use Vim Fugitive pretty heavily. I recently switched from ACK to ripgrep, but I still have ACK installed, so I have to remove that. A couple other great plugins over here. Oh, you're still seeing the slides. I'm so sorry. Yep. So part of doing this whole talk was trying to learn about streaming, and I took to hacking this little between my scenes, but I'm still getting used to it a little bit. So here's some of my plugins over there. I'll quickly show what I use to run Python files, since that's one of the cooler bits. So this is the mapping that I currently use to run a Python file by hitting enter. So I remap in the current buffer, enter, to silently make this the only window, just to make moving around the windows easier. Then I split open a terminal and I run, in my case, ipython3-i, and then the file that I was just on. IPython is just slightly nicer than Python if you have it installed, but Python works just as well. And the -i is what jumps you into that interactive debugging mode. So if something goes wrong, you can print out all the variables there. Oh, I'm so sorry. Let me move this to the top with ZT. And I even have another view if you just want to see the terminal. Great, everyone. Thank you so much. I'll keep an eye on the questions here until someone comes in to kick me out. I believe the next talk is going to be the Primogens talk, which was originally going to be before mine, but is now moved. While I have you here, another cool perk of this little macro pad I'm hacking is it's a soundboard. So I don't know if you'll hear it, but blow out my eardrums. So someone asked about using Vim script for plugins, given NeoVim's new plugin system. I haven't written Vim plugins in a little bit, so I haven't kept up. Lua seems very cool. You'll still probably want to write some plugins that support both Vim and NeoVim, and I'm not clear on how to do that with Lua. But hey. And this macro pad, I'm trying to figure out how to use it better for programming. Honestly, you can remap anything in Vim and any kind of chord keyboard combination. So every time I've played with foot pedals or external boards, it's just easier to find a mapping on your keyboard than go externally. Yep, so I did switch to NeoVim. It's fairly easy. You have to, symlink your config files or something. But after that, you really won't notice any downsides to switching these days. It comes with a lot of cool features. Some of them have been backported to Vim, but it was first with the terminal emulation mode that was super useful. It was first with the async stuff. So I'm really happy I switched to NeoVim. And I think if you switch, you'll never look back. Favorite built-in trick. I don't know what to call a built-in trick. Let me talk about some of my mappings, I guess. Some mappings that I'm just trying with is you can use Control P and Control N to autocomplete words, but I only want to use this when I want to accept the first result. So if I want to type I know remap again, I don't want to type this, hit Control P. I just hit Command P, tried to print my terminal. So I don't want to do this, type Control P, and then have a list that I have to like select the entry from. I only want to use it if it's automatic and I know that it's going to type the right word. So instead, I'm trying this mapping where I just do Control P, Control Y. And I was running out of things in insert mode that wouldn't clash with things. So I'm trying out this comma period to insert a word there. And line complete works as well with this OEU. So since I'm in Dvorak, I can type I know remap and type OEU for a line completion. Let's see what other tricks. There's a bunch of little things. So I highly recommend you browse other people's VimRCs and just try to pick up little tricks. So having VV select to the end of the line, kind of like CC does, is a big help. I use X for escape in visual mode since D already works for that. Lots of great stuff you can find by reading other people's VimRCs. There's a visual star plugin down there, not really a plugin, but this means that you can highlight any arbitrary bit of text and just hit star to search on it. It's very useful. So definitely read other people's VimRCs and figure out what plugins are there. 4 minutes. I got 4 minutes that I can talk about other great stuff with. Let's see what else is good to talk about in here. Happy to eat up the time. A very minor plugin that's pretty useful is Brightest. So as you might notice, the word under my cursor is highlighted in red. This makes it very easy to catch spelling mistakes. Takes a little getting used to, but once you do, it's just a nice little feature on top of Vim. I use Wombat 256 mod for my plugin. As I said, text objects are pretty useful. That VII comes from this Vim text object indent to select everything in an indentation level. Targets is a great plugin. Here's Vim Sneak, which you can actually change your F and T to use Vim Sneak, which is why when I type FF, I get these highlight results. And instead of typing semicolon, I can type F to repeat. Surround is, of course, one of the good old, very great plugins to change single quotes to double quotes, for instance. Quickfix Reflector is that great plugin I talked about that lets you edit your Quickfix list. And to answer your question, I'm not using relative line numbers just because I'm not fast enough yet at typing the number keys. So for me, I'm fine moving around with searches and sneaks and honestly a lot of JK or using curly braces to move between sections. Switch.vim is the plugin I recently found to switch between true and false and things like that. It falls back to speed dating, which is for incrementing or decrementing dates. And I'm still use Control P just because I tried Denight and it was a little too complicated for me. And I haven't given a good shot at FCF yet. You're going to find that I am big on customizing Vim as much as you want. So I have a ton of old plugins in here. I'm fine with remapping things like crazy. Let's see if anything else sticks out here. A lot of these are somewhat more standard plugins, nothing quickly demoable. But, yep. That's about all I got. So I hope you enjoyed my talk. Feel free to find me on Twitter, on GitHub, chat me up here about anything, whether it's Vim stuff, programming stuff, you're interested in the company I work for, whatever you can do. And I use regular Dvorak. And on that note, I'm out. See you guys later.